Hi, I'm Amy Couture, and I'm here today with Rich Kennedy. He is a physical therapist and founder and partner in Kennedy's Brothers Physical Therapy. He is also one of the few founders of the Angel Fund. So thank you, Rich, for coming in and talking to me today.
Thank you, Amy, very much.
So why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself and your ALS story?
Sure. My ALS story goes all the way back to my dad's graduation party, not his retirement party. My dad was at Northeastern for years, and after 40 years service, I was hosting the party, and one of my brother-in-laws, who's a physician, came to me and said, "I think your dad's had a stroke." I shook his hand. I couldn't believe how weak he was, and went back and made an excuse to shake it again. There's something wrong with him. We talked my dad into seeing a neurologist. He said, "No, I'm retired, I'm going to Florida." But eventually we won that argument, and they did a CAT scan and found multiple brain tumors. After removing and then treating for the brain tumors, he continued to decline until finally, about a month before he passed away, the doctor said that what your dad has is actually ALS. That meant something to me, my brother who's a therapist, my sister who's a nurse, and to nobody else. There were 8 of us, by the way, and the other 5, what does that mean? Well, we knew that was a death sentence. So about a month later, on July 4th, 1989, my dad passed away. The neurologist was very comforting to us and said that the rest of you have nothing to worry about. It's not a genetically passed on disease. And unfortunately, we found out the hard way. My brother Jimmy, the youngest of all of us, started having serious issues as well, trying to hide it from his wife as long as possible. Jimmy had gone to law school, passed the bar, gotten a job in DC, and just bought a house. And when it came time where he couldn't hide it anymore, he said to his wife, "I've got to tell you something." And she said, "Me first, I'm pregnant." So he went straight downhill, diagnosed at 28, and unfortunately gone at 31, leaving a 3-year-old son behind. That's when I knew I had to do something. I cannot tolerate the feeling of standing by hopelessly, which is what I was for my brother Jimmy. There's nothing we could do for him at that time. In honor of him, we put together a road race called the First Annual Jimmy Kennedy Memorial for ALS. We were hoping to raise $20,000, and when I looked around and saw people taking 75% out of a drawer, etc., I was quoted in several papers saying that if we raise $20,000, that's exactly what we're going to give. Now, I further did my homework and found Dr. Robert Brown, world's leading researcher, and I would have gone to China, Japan, anywhere he was to find him, and he was at Mass General. So I got lucky. Yeah. But again, I vowed that whatever money we raised, I would never take a salary from and would be passed along to him expressly for ALS Research. Despite an absolute monsoon and the highest rainfall the city of Quincy has ever seen in one day, we held the first annual Jimmy Kennedy, and we didn't raise $20,000, we raised $25,000.
Wow.
What's great about it is I was quoted enough that it caught the attention of this woman named Ginny Del Vecchio, who had lost several family members to ALS as well. Her husband contacted me and wanted me to meet Ginny, and unfortunately, about 4 days after our first event, Ginny passed away also. The story is terrible, the number of people we've lost for it, but you'll see it gets optimistic in a few minutes. So, Paul Del Vecchio, his cousin Gene Nigro, who has an office here in Wakefield, met me and decided this is what we're going to do. We're going to create a vehicle through which we fund Dr. Brown's work and give him pretty much anything he wants. I'm so proud of the fact that we've raised just over $17 million in all this time.
Wow.
I've never taken a dime. My board of directors has never taken a dime. Now, the Dr. Brown story takes a little bit of a shift because even though he's tenured at Mass General, he's on the teaching staff at Harvard Medical School, Around 7, maybe 8 years ago, a doctor by the name of Craig Mello and from UMass Medical and Andrew Fire from Stanford Medical won a Nobel Prize for something called RNA interference. So knowing the implications that could have for genetically based ALS, Dr. Brown makes the rough decision to go to Worcester and work from there. Our donations have never stopped because the research has just gotten better and better and better and better as we've gone along. We've seen this just incredibly encouraging. Few key moments when we realized we could slip something past the brain-blood barrier. That's a huge implication for getting medication into exactly where you want it. ALS really begins in the brain, and you're talking about a defect where you're shutting down motor nerves. So in order to get that at its source, you are going right to the brain. So I watched Dr. Brown, the most calm man in the world, dancing from one foot to the other, et cetera, when we figured we'd get viruses and things like that past it. That worked tremendously. And then I had the incredible honor of being an audience of one with 7 doctors looking for more money, presented to me something called gene silencing. Now, all I've got is the family history at this point, but they're describing this, and I interrupted and said, wait, I know enough just to be dangerous. If you're gonna monkey around with my DNA, does that mean I might grow a second head or a third arm? I forget who the doctor was, but he looked at me very seriously and said, maybe. They promised, though, that this would be far enough along when they start doing it on people. So anyway, that's that, and that makes us all unbelievably optimistic. Now, a little over 4 years ago, training for what should have been my 32nd Boston Marathon, I'm going out for a 23-mile run, and about 8 miles in, my left leg just quit. When you've got a family history of ALS, there's kind of a cloud that follows you everywhere. Rather than thinking I've overtrained, rather than think I turned my ankle or something like that, no, I knew what that was. As a physical therapist, I've treated 60 to 70 ALS patients, so I know it better than I should with all of this. So I've got that long walk, 8.5 miles home, dragging my left foot along the way. Local people saying, what's wrong with you? You're always running. Nothing, I'm fine. I need to walk, I need to walk, I need to walk. Anyway, that comes, I see Dr. Brown the very next day. He sends the blood away, and he says, we have to wait 2 weeks before confirmation, but I already knew. There's too much evidence there. So off it comes. He calls my wife and I in, give us the bad news. And I said, yeah, I know, etc. But the gene silencing and everything else now has got me so incredibly positive. Dr. Brown was brilliant enough to put me on 2 experimental medications, which after 3 years came out saying that it seriously slows down the progression of ALS. So there's one step for Dr. Brown, and the next step is going to be very likely the gene silencing. So, Amy, it's all about perspective. My brother Jimmy was 28. I was 56 when I was diagnosed. I've got 4 healthy, college-graduated kids, etc. So the most important thing, though, is with my dad, it was a death sentence. With my brother Jimmy, it was a death sentence. With so many of the patients who I've treated, death sentence. We're changing that just a little bit. I get so tired of answering people saying, you know, Lou Gehrig died 60 years ago, and you're no closer to finding a cure. And my response to them would be, yeah, but we know so much more now. Yeah, but, and on it went. The day is coming when ALS will be treatable. I've said frequently, I know more about ALS than anybody should. I was the standby, do-nothing idiot while my dad and brother died. I then became the fundraiser for ALS. I then became the caretaker as a physical therapist for ALS patients. 4th hat I wear is ALS victim. I'm going to come back here with a hat saying ALS survivor. That's how optimistic I am about all of this. The medication is great just to delay the symptoms, but we're looking more for a home run, and that's what the gene silencing promises to be.
That's amazing.
Well, thank you.
So I have a quick question about the Jimmy Kennedy run.
Yes.
So was he also a runner like you were?
He was. Jimmy, there's 7 years between Jimmy and I, but we could have been twins. I was the first in my family to play football. He followed and played football. We once did a comparison who got more concussions, a real macho thing to do. I think I won, but no matter. Football and track. My three passions in high school were football, track, and the Three Stooges, all right? Football gave me concussions, Three Stooges made me an idiot, and the running I've carried on forever and ever and ever. My dad was not a runner himself, but would bring us in every year to see the Boston Marathon. So it kind of became an obsession for some of his kids to go ahead and run that. Back to Jimmy. Jimmy was a high school runner, did not run in college like I did, but enough of a competitor that we knew we had an easy fit here. One, it would be a road race, and number two, we'd do it in Quincy. I've been through 3 mayoral regimes, and each one has just been better and better and more supportive than the one before that. So we knew we would have something. If we did it in his name, we did a run, we did it in Quincy, and that's exactly what's happened.
That's amazing.
Yep.
So what other kind of fundraisers does the Angel Fund do?
Some much better than others. The Harpoon Brewery has done more for us than anybody. They hold an annual 5-mile race and have this enormous, fabulous party afterward. With such success, I said it's either a great cause, a stunningly good race director, or free beer. Maybe a little of each. Anyway, they, except for this year, which was an aberration, they raised between $230,000 and $270,000 a year.
Wow.
Specifically for, again, the ALS research. There's another race we do out in Hopkinton. It's called the Sharon Timlin Memorial. If you remember Mike Timlin, who pitched for the Red Sox. He lost his mom to ALS, and I got probably 400 emails telling me, connect with this guy. Sat down, brought them up to our office in Wakefield, and they liked the tenor of it, the enthusiasm of it, all that. So the Timlins are phenomenal. They allowed us to call the Hopkinton race the Sharon Timlin Memorial, and multiple Timlin family members come out to it every year. They're
That's
in Colorado,
amazing.
and they think nothing of just hopping out to spend the day and signing autographs and things like that. That's another event which has raised, anywhere between $200,000 and $230,000 a year. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
We've done golf tournaments, we've done fashion shows, we do an annual walk around Lake Quannapowitt here every year. Someone does a raffle at her softball games. You know, it's amazing. It's what I call the Angel Fund family, is that even if you've lost a loved one, you stick with us and continue to do events like that. So somewhere around $1 million a year, except for this past year. We had to go virtual with a lot of our things and actually cancel outright some others. One I forgot to mention, one of my heroes, Walter Benson, who said ALS for about 15 years now, organizes a 100-inning baseball game.
Wow.
Walter and I sit there like a couple of dopes at 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning, etc. It takes about 36 hours to play the entire thing.
Really?
But that's, again, a tremendous event that when we had to cancel it this year, I got so many calls. Make sure you're doing it again next year. There are players who have played all 100 innings. I think there are like 9 or 10 of them in every event we've had for that. So again, in the city of Quincy at Adams Field, if you're a baseball player, come join us. If you're not a baseball player, come join us anyway. Come keep me company.
Yeah.
Simple as that. So the main gist of all of this, is to just get as many people involved with this as possible. Dr. Brown and the staff out at UMass are phenomenal. that we bring someone out, someone gives me a $5,000 check, I say to them, do you want to come out and see the lab? Roll out the red carpet, etc. They've been so appreciative of all that we can do.
That's amazing.
Yeah, thank you.
So tell me a little bit more about the Angel Fund. When did it begin?
23 years ago. You're talking about, several things coming together. The first annual Jimmy Kennedy race, me being quoted so many times in the paper about it, brought me in touch with the Nigros and the Delvecchios. It had been poor Ginny who passed away. It had been her idea to create something. That's why it's called the Angel Fund. I call her the original angel. That would be getting money to the best possible place, which is Dr. Brown in his lab. So it was actually at her wake or funeral the first time the three of us, Jean Nigro, myself, Paul Delvecchio, actually met and made that simple decision. So we're going to go forward together.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
What does the future hold for the Angel Fund?
Well, as I called myself about to be the first Angel Fund survivor, that should send things skyrocketing. I've said all along I'm going to run the Boston Marathon one more time. I'm riding my bike now, not yet running, but I'm getting closer every day. So to get to the other side of this and be the first one to do so has, I think, got so much power that other organizations who give money to certain organizations are going to turn much toward ours. I tell people all the time, please, the Attorney General's office has a list of charities, and you can look, and if someone's giving 40% of what they raise, don't give to that charity. We've never been lower than 92%. So certain things you have to pay for, but everything else we hustle for. Gene Nigro's office right here in Wakefield has been phenomenal, that his administrative staff has taken care of all the administration more or less at his cost. So that keeps our bottom line very high. So all good and extremely optimistic. But soon enough, I will go on a speaking tour. I will let the Globe and Channel 5 and let everybody know when I'm running the marathon, because I think that turns into an incredible human interest story.
Yeah, for sure, absolutely.
And I expect the donations to triple when that is. The Angel Fund has two great things going for it. Number one is our low overhead. Number two is results. So not many other organizations can point to things like that. So I think fundraising gets easier from here.
That's always a good thing. So for anybody who might be watching that has ALS or knows somebody that does, what is maybe some advice that you could give them to help get through these challenges that they face ahead?
Absolutely. Amy, I see a lot of patients when they're first diagnosed, just to spread my enthusiasm. Number one, the medical study I talked about, and you're going to put my phone number up there because I can transfer all this information to them. Two different medications, which looked great in the lab but kind of fizzled when they got to people. Two guys at MIT decided, why don't we put those two together? And I've been taking that for 3 years. And one of the reasons I'm sure I can still speak so well. Anyway, the published study comes out and shows that, in fact, those two medications dramatically slow the progression of ALS. So my first response is absolutely get on those medications as quick as possible. Number two, for years as a patient, I would have someone from the big Biogen, big drug companies, and they would leave saying, oh, I'm sure I can get you some money. And they would come back and say, well, the board of directors, 5,000 new cases a year, doesn't mean much. Well, this is how things have changed. There are now 3 different drug companies who are all doing ALS studies. They're all ALS genetic studies because that's the easier one to follow. But we're seeing some spill over into what we call sporadic ALS, where there's no family history or anything like that. So again, the perspective is, Jimmy was 28, I'm 56. Jimmy had no hope whatsoever, and I get more hope every single day. So anyone who's listening, who's suffering with it or lost someone to it, keep your enthusiasm. I sat and did some planning for the drug companies, and they all want me because of my enthusiasm. I just tell them I'm too dumb to know any better. You know, I'm not supposed to lay down and die from this, that this is going to go on and on. That'll only carry you so far. And the medication certainly helps, and seeing what's on the horizon really helps as well.
That's amazing. And how about your horizon? Is the experiment, or whatever what you're calling it, almost to a close?
Well, again, I can't say too much about that right now, but it's given me such unbelievable optimism that going into a newly diagnosed patient's house, their body language tells you all. And walking out of there, you should see the body posture change.
Yeah.
So again, it's not the average person knows anything about this. I'm good enough now that I can actually direct people to certain studies and tell them, you know, get on with this one and get on this one. Don't go to that one because their placebo rate is way too high. That's the little part that I've had in planning. How do you make it most applicable to patients? So it's changing. As I tell orthopedic patients of mine, put off getting that artificial hip for as long as you can, because 6 months from now, there's going to be a much better one coming along. This is a classic example of, you know, hang on, hang on, hang on, hang on, hang on, and we'll come to a cure.
That's amazing. Well, thank you so much for coming and speaking with me today and telling your story.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll see you next time on WCAT.